Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay?
Did you know Cary Elwes was so sure The Princess Bride would flop, he didn't even tell people he was in it? Released in 1987, it wasn't a hit at first, but over time it became one of the most beloved cult classics of the 80s. And Cary Elwes as the dashing Wesley became an icon, charming, funny, and endlessly quotable. But after The Princess Bride, something strange happened. He didn't explode into stardom like many expected. He turned up in comedies, a war film, even a natural disaster blockbuster, but by the early 2000s he had all but vanished from the spotlight. And then, out of nowhere, he came back. So, what the hell happened to Cary Elwes? Let's fade to black. Cary Elwes was born Ivan Simon Cary Elwes on October 26, 1962, in Westminster, London. His family had deep artistic roots. His father was a portrait painter, and his mother was an interior designer. He grew up surrounded by art, history, and storytelling, which gave him a love for performance from an early age. But it wasn't just the arts. Cary's upbringing also had strong ties to British nobility. His grandfather was a knight, and the Elwes family had been prominent in English society for generations. He attended Harrow, one of the top public schools in the UK, before moving to the US in his late teens to study acting. Elwes trained at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and later studied at the Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute in New York. That combination, classical British stage training mixed with American method acting, gave him an unusual flexibility. He could do period drama, screwball comedy, or psychological intensity without ever feeling miscast. His first screen roles were small, a supporting part in the British drama Yesterday's Hero in 1979, and a bit part in Another Country in 1984, starring Rupert Everett and Colin Firth. But even then, people noticed his poise and screen presence. He wasn't the loudest actor in the room, but there was something about him, that quiet confidence, the glint in the eye, that made you watch him. And in just a couple of years, that quality would land him the role of a lifetime. In 1987, Cary Elwes landed the role that would define his career: Wesley, the farm boy turned swashbuckling hero in The Princess Bride. Directed by Rob Reiner and based on William Goldman's novel, The Princess Bride was a strange mix, part fairy tale, part comedy, part action film, with a big heart and a razor-sharp sense of humour. The tone was hard to pin down, and that's probably why studios really didn't know how to market it. The film did modest box office business. It wasn't a flop, but it didn't make Elwes a star overnight either. But over time, The Princess Bride became one of the most beloved cult films of its era. VHS rentals, word of mouth, and regular cable screenings gave it a second life, and suddenly Cary Elwes wasn't just a rising actor, he was iconic. As Wesley, he had the perfect mix of Errol Flynn charm and dry British wit. He played it straight, even when the dialogue was absurd, and that's what made it work. He wasn't winking at the camera, he was fully in it. Looking back, the entire cast is packed with legends: Mandy Patinkin, Robin Wright, Wallace Shawn, Andre the Giant. But Elwes was the heart of it all, the romantic lead, the action hero, and the comic straight man. And yet, casting directors weren't exactly clambering over themselves to cast him in their next big thing. He wasn't a typical action star, he wasn't gruff or intense, he wasn't American. And although The Princess Bride became a classic, it didn't lead to the kind of offers you might expect. Cary Elwes was now famous, but his future in Hollywood was anything but secure. After The Princess Bride, Elwes began picking up a string of solid, diverse roles, a sign that Hollywood was at least paying attention. In 1989, he appeared in Glory, the Oscar-winning Civil War drama starring Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick. Elwes played Major Cabot Forbes, a privileged officer wrestling with the racial dynamics of the war and his own sense of honour. It was a serious, emotionally weighty film, and Elwes held his own alongside a powerhouse cast. Even though The Princess Bride made him iconic, Cary wasn't done with mainstream success. In 1990, he appeared in Days of Thunder, holding his own alongside Tom Cruise in one of the era's biggest blockbusters. And in 1992, he took a stylish turn as Lord Arthur Holmwood in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's lush, operatic adaptation. The film was a gothic fever dream, and while Elwes wasn't the central figure, he brought a dash of Victorian nobility to an already star-studded cast. He turned up in Hot Shots, a broad spoof of Top Gun that gave him a chance to flex his comedy muscles. He played Lieutenant Kent Gregory, the square-jawed rival to Charlie Sheen's Maverick stand-in, and surprisingly he was great at it. His timing was sharp, his delivery deadpan. If Wesley was a callback to Errol Flynn, then Kent Gregory was his airplane parody. Then came Robin Hood Men in Tights in '93, probably the second most famous role of his career. Directed by Mel Brooks, it was a send-up of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Elwes was in the perfect sweet spot. He had just the right blend of confidence and self-awareness, parodying the Hollywood hero archetype while still making the character feel grounded. He even delivers one of the film's most famous lines.
"Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent."
It was a hit with fans, especially on home video, but again, the pattern started to emerge. He was consistently good, often very funny, always likeable, but not essential. He wasn't leading big studio dramas, he wasn't in action thrillers or franchise blockbusters, and as the 90s moved forward, Elwes, for all his charm and versatility, started being slotted into supporting roles. Hollywood liked having him around, sure, but he was slowly drifting into the background. By the mid-1990s, Cary Elwes had built a respectable filmography, cult comedy hits, a war drama, a serious Civil War epic, but despite his range, he was never locked in as a go-to leading man, and instead of breaking into that next tier, his career began to plateau. In Twister in '96, one of the biggest box office hits of the decade, Elwes played Jonas, the slick corporate-funded rival storm chaser to Bill Paxton's more rugged, blue-collar hero. He was solid in the role, but it was a clear supporting part, and not a particularly sympathetic one. That same year, he appeared in The Crush, opposite a young Alicia Silverstone. It was a psychological thriller with a problematic edge, and while the film has its fans, it didn't do much to push his profile forward. Then came Liar Liar in '97, the Jim Carrey comedy where Elwes played the safe, boring stepdad figure to Carrey's chaotic lead. Again, he was fine, likeable, steady, but he was mostly there to give Carrey something to bounce off, and that became the pattern. Over the next few years, he worked steadily, but few of the roles were memorable. TV movies, small indie dramas, occasionally popping up in a network procedural or ensemble comedy. You'd see him and think, hey, it's the guy from The Princess Bride, but that was about it. To be fair, he never stopped working, but for a while it felt like Hollywood had his career in a holding pattern and didn't quite know what to do with him again. He wasn't out of the industry, he was just there. One of his more underrated roles came in Kiss the Girls in 1997, opposite Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd, a taut psychological thriller based on the James Patterson novel. Elwes played a seemingly helpful doctor whose true role in the story takes a disturbing turn. It was a chance to show a darker side, restrained, clever, and deeply unsettling. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying the video so far, feel free to hit subscribe if you haven't already. These videos take a fair bit of time to research and put together, and subscribing is a simple way to make sure you don't miss the next one. There's plenty more on the way. Now, back to Cary Elwes. But then in 2004, everything changed, in the unlikeliest way imaginable. In 2004, Cary Elwes made one of the most unexpected returns in modern genre film, appearing in Saw, a gritty, low-budget horror movie that would go on to become one of the most profitable franchises of all time. I'll admit, I did a double take when his face popped up in Saw. Being a big horror fan, and obviously a fan of his earlier roles, I wasn't expecting to see Cary Elwes chained to a wall in a grimy bathroom screaming his lungs out. Elwes played Dr. Lawrence Gordon, a surgeon who wakes up in a locked room with a stranger on the other side and a corpse between them. What follows is a slow, psychological descent, desperation, lies, flashbacks, and one of the most memorable third-act twists in modern horror. And yes, the foot scene. By now it's legendary. For many viewers, it was the first time they'd seen Elwes in years, and it wasn't a romantic lead or a comedy parody this time. It was raw, panicked, sweaty horror, and he committed to it. There are moments in Saw where the performance teeters on melodrama, but that's part of its charm. The whole film walks that line, and Elwes goes all in. Director James Wan later praised Elwes for being a good sport during a tough, fast-paced shoot. The film was made for just over $1 million and went on to gross more than $100 million worldwide. It launched a franchise, revived the so-called torture porn subgenre, and reminded Hollywood that Elwes still had something to offer, especially when cast against type. And to his credit, he didn't milk it too hard. He stepped away from the direct sequels, only returning much later in Saw 3D in 2010 to close out his character's arc. But the message was clear: Cary Elwes wasn't done. After Saw, Cary Elwes could have faded back into the background again, but instead he did something cleverer. He leaned into what made him unique. He began popping up in genre shows, comedies and prestige dramas, often playing versions of the same thing audiences remembered him for: charming, slightly smug, occasionally untrustworthy authority figures. Then came a steady run of high-profile guest appearances: Psych, Leverage, The X-Files, Life in Pieces. Each time, he brought that same Elwes charm: polished, sly, a little theatrical and always enjoyable. In 2019, he showed up in Stranger Things Season 3, playing the oily mayor Larry Klein, a corrupt Reagan-era politician who felt ripped straight out of a Stephen King novel. It was a small part, but a scene stealer. He brought just the right amount of sleaze and reminded younger viewers that the guy from The Princess Bride was still a force to be reckoned with. Around the same time, he turned up in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and even voiced a character in The Adventures of Paddington. He's become what you might call a modern working actor, someone who doesn't need to lead the movie to elevate a scene. He's Cary Elwes. You know the voice, you know the look, and you're glad to see him. And in a way, that's a kind of career longevity a lot of flashier stars never actually get. He reunited with Guy Ritchie for Operation Fortune, playing a government figure wrapped in espionage and absurdity. Then came the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare in 2024, a true-life action romp where he shared the screen with Henry Cavill, channeling old-school British charm with ease. He also popped up in Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder's space opera for Netflix. It didn't set the world on fire critically, well actually it was completely awful, but seeing Elwes amidst all the spectacle reminded fans just how versatile he's always been. Away from the screen, he's kept his personal life relatively private. He married photographer Lisa Marie Kurbikoff in 2000, and the two have a daughter together. They've stayed mostly out of the public eye, and Elwes has never really played into the Hollywood game. In 2014, he published a memoir titled As You Wish, Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride, which became a New York Times bestseller. It's a warm, funny, behind-the-scenes look at the film that made him famous, and it solidified his role as both caretaker and ambassador of that movie's legacy. He still turns up in films and shows, and seems comfortable in that space, working steadily, picking roles that interest him, and occasionally surprising people when he reappears on screen. Cary Elwes may not have had the blockbuster career some expected after The Princess Bride. He never became the next Errol Flynn. He didn't headline franchises or chase Marvel roles, but he found something else: longevity, loyalty, cult status, a place in cinema that doesn't depend on hype. And really, isn't it incredible that one solitary role can cement your legacy in the hearts and minds of people across generations? For all the comedies, horror films, guest spots, and dramatic turns he's taken over the years, it's The Princess Bride that people still come back to. And Cary Elwes, with that voice, that charm, that glint in the eye, is always right there, reminding us why we loved him in the first place. And that one line still echoes, soft, simple, and unforgettable.
Please.
As you wish.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives just like this. It really helps the channel grow, and I appreciate every one of you who's joined the journey. And as ever, I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.